So my name is Erika Weiberg, and I'm an assistant professor of classical studies at Duke University, and I'm going to be talking about the timeline for the academic job market in classics, what to expect and when. And I want to emphasize here that this is not meant to be prescriptive. It's going to vary a lot. I think your experience of this and different disciplines also have different timelines. And so really what I'm describing here is just for classics. And it's intended to help you, especially if it's the first time that you're applying, get a sense of when your schedule will be really busy with what. And that I hope will empower you to be able to choose to take on different things at the right time. So we're going to talk about the typical timeline for different types of academic jobs, where to find out about them and when you'll hear back, as well as identify other time-sensitive events that you'll be juggling at the same time, especially if you're currently still working on your dissertation. As well as at the end, cover a few changes that might occur as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the timeline differs depending on what kind of a job you're going to be applying to. And as I said before, this can also vary quite a lot depending on the institution advertising for the job and conducting the job search. So this is just meant to give you a general idea. But for tenure track jobs, and we're going to talk about the different kinds of jobs a little bit later on, for these types of jobs, you'll see ads begin to appear in August, and most application materials will be due around mid-October and early December, through early December. Your first time on the job market, it takes a lot of time refining job docs and applying to jobs. And so I think you'll find that September and October will be especially busy months. And I flag this because you might want to not try to finish your dissertation during those months, not put the burden on yourself of trying to do too many things at the same time as applying for jobs, because those months are often where you feel the pressure a lot. First round Zoom interviews tend to take place in November, December, and early January, and then campus visits will take place typically January, February, and March. For visiting assistant professor jobs, teaching faculty, and lecturer jobs, you can see ads as early as the fall semester, but most tend to crop up around the beginning of the spring semester and may appear as late as the summer before the fall term when the position begins. And again, the due dates really vary here, but they tend to be in the spring semester from February through April. Some of these positions do first round Zoom interviews and campus visits. Others only do a Zoom interview, and those interviews and campus visits, if they take place, will tend to be in March, April, and May. But again, timing really varies here. Finally, if you're applying for postdocs, I think this is really the most variable category of all in terms of timeline. So materials for postdoc researcher positions may be due in the fall, sometimes even before tenure track job applications are due, or they may be due in the spring. Often there are multiple rounds where you'll be asked to submit more materials, and interviews for these positions tend to happen in the spring. So where do you find a job ad? I talked about how you'll see job ads posted. You should be signing up for the SCS placement service if you're going to be applying for jobs in classics. And you'll also see a lot of these job ads posted on the WCC and LCC listservs. People often wonder when they'll hear back after they submit their application materials, and I'm sorry to deliver the news that often you never hear back. I think that's actually more typical than hearing back. And so that can create a lot of stress for people on the job market because you're always wondering, has the search moved on or not? And you can't necessarily expect that the search committee will tell you. You can usually expect to receive an interview request within a month of the application due date if you do get an interview request, but that time frame again can vary greatly depending on what's going on with the search. If you are interviewed though, search committees should tell you the time frame of when you can expect to hear back from them. And if they don't, it's totally fine to ask. And in fact, it's fine to ask throughout this process if you want to know more about the timeline of the search. You can contact the search committee chair. So for those who are also juggling dissertation defenses at the same time, I just wanted to have a note here about to schedule your dissertation defense, because most universities require you to defend and submit your dissertation before the job start date, which for some jobs can be as early as June or July. So often in ads, you'll see something like PhD in hand expected or something like that. And from the perspective of hiring committees, defense dates really matter. They like to know them. So if you do know yours, that's important information to deliver in your cover letter. Make sure that your letter writers are all on the same page about when you'll defend. And I think this is something that really can help your job application process if you can make that information known and really talk with your committee in advance about what's reasonable for you at the same time as you're juggling all of these things. Also, people want to know when to ask for letters of recommendation, and the answer to this is, as usual, I think, as early as you possibly can, because communication is so important, and letters of recommendation are really important parts of your job dossier. So if you know that you will apply in the upcoming cycle, let your letter writers know at least the summer before that cycle begins. And you might want to have a conversation with them about your plans and what you're looking to do. And they will be able to advise about who to ask for letters and what should be included in them. But I will put a little shout out here to another event that the WCC did on letters of recommendation, and you can find those videos at this link here. Finally, COVID-19 has really changed a lot of how this whole process works. And so I just want to flag, since I know some of you, we're still in the pandemic, so some of these things may continue to be a lot more variable than they were in the past. So in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot more variation in terms of application due dates and when jobs are posted. This was actually a change that was already in the works before the pandemic, but I'll also note that first round interviews no longer happen at the Society for Classical Studies or Archaeological Institute of America annual meeting during the first weekend of January. So there is greater flexibility with timing in general now, and so the timeline might change a bit as a result. And I'll finally note that during the last 2 years, many campus visits also happened virtually, but in conversations I've been having with colleagues as well as our panelists, I think it's likely that departments will return to in-person campus visits if their university allows it. So that's all for my presentation on timeline.